Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chouinard. I'm here with Glen Willis. We're recording on a Wednesday in between the NBA Cup games. The Hawks won their first one against Boston, and they're going to play Friday against the Wizards, who are undefeated against the Hawks this season and winless against everybody else, as Wembanyama puts 50 on them right now. Um, Let's talk a little bit about that Boston game, Glenn.
Yeah, the
What did you
Dyson
see?
Daniels game. I mean, he looked like a real point guard. I mean, it, what I loved about what he did was that he did the things that he did well. He didn't try to do things that he's not really skilled to do. So he stayed within himself. It got downhill, attacked space. Um, he had six turnovers. I think six. Um, I don't think it's a surprise going up against maybe the best set of defensive guards in the league on any team. Six is probably a decent number for him stepping into and pitch hitting and in that role. Of course, on defense, he's continues to be very special on defense. But it really, I mean, they pretty consistently had good defensive lineups on the floor. As if Glen went big, and it really paid off. It helps that Larry Nance is shooting like 90% from the three-point line so far this year, or something like that.
I mean, it's
But no, I mean, just like to get that win. I said on Twitter after the game, like it just goes to show if you lean into your habits and believe in what you're doing, it can make a difference in a game like that. Now, the Boston didn't play their best game, for sure. Um, but I just thought they competed all 48 minutes, and I think that was big.
yeah, like I liked what Dyson Daniels did on offense. Like he's got a good rhythm with his little floater and his little baby bag shots. But you said something earlier today, and I kind of agreed with you. I had to think why. And earlier today, you said something like, it's good that the Hawks weren't necessarily playing through Jalen, that they played through Dyson.
Yep.
And one thing that really stands out to me is the unsuccessful drives because an unsuccessful drive early in the shot clock isn't that big of a problem. And Dyson had a lot of them last night. Like he's driving, somebody digs, the primary defensive assignment is stays on task and is there the whole time. But Dyson plays very patiently through that. He's careful, he surveys, you know, what do I got to do because I'm just going to have to get off of it here. And, comparing that a little bit to Jalen, it doesn't go as well when Jalen gets in that situation. When he drives and is forced to stop, sometimes those passes that he makes once he's uh once he's picked up his dribble, they're just not as good. Like they get tipped, they don't really set anybody up. And that's to me, that was one of the big differences in their drives.
Yeah,
And
and I
and
think
and, and just again, like Dyson was so good at so many things, but that was just like one stupid thing, but it's a meaningful thing because he had the ball so much. He had to try to create edges for his teammates, but sometimes it just didn't happen, but it wasn't disastrous when it didn't.
yeah, yeah. Jalen is to me, especially against a high level defense. Jalen's not ready to be your closer, right? He needs more reps. He needs to be a guy that's playing off of a primary in that setting. And maybe later in the season, next season, he's going to develop more confidence through certain opportunities or repetitions and things like that. But to your point, he kind of gets stuck with the ball sometimes. And it's interesting. I don't want to go like too much down a rabbit hole, but sometimes guys like that, they'll have him kind of play at the nail where he can see everything from the nail. The deeper he gets, the tighter the line of sight is. I think that's where some of his tough reads come from, as he's getting really deep and teams collapse on him. Two, three defenders collapsing on him. And the deeper you get into that, the harder it is to do something constructive with the ball. And so sometimes, when you're helping someone kind of iterate towards a more well-rounded game, you'll simplify it, like stop at the nail, take that shot. Of course, if there's one defender in the paint, it's a small guy. You want it. That's the one where the green light. When I'm coaching kids, it's red light, green light. Kind of like that's what we work with. When you see this as a green light, when you see this as a red light, I'm sure it's a lot more sophisticated with actual NBA players than that. But it'd be interesting to see how Jalen deals with that. And Dyson has had a lot of experience internationally, and I think you said you talked to him after the game about playing some point guard in the G League the one season he was, and so it's not like it was the very first time he'd ever played point guard, but to do that against what some people consider to be the best defensive team in the league, just wildly impressive, for sure. And I do think if Dyson had not been so reliable the whole game in that role, and they felt like they had to go through Jalen, they would, in my view, they would not have won that game because I think Jalen's just not ready for that. You get Jalen against say a bottom eight defensive team that can't, isn't as structured and doesn't have like the Celtics have a ton of roster continuity and game continuity and all that sort. That's just a really tough. That would have been a tough ask for Jalen. So for me, like, very glad that Dyson was able to kind of give them what they needed to close the game.
I thought that was a Kongwu's best game of the season.
Yeah,
And there were some obvious things like Boston, to me, they seemed way too comfortable with him getting like one-on-one mismatches against guards, right under the hoop. And I don't know what possessed them because I think that Boston as a team really values the post up for their own offense. So they
yeah,
know that, in the right situations that's a key weapon. And, if there's one thing that Anyek has been consistent with throughout his whole career, it's been finishing around the rim. But he gave them that. He was punishing the switches and things like that in the paint. And bizarrely, he had a lot of space to do it too, because just to me, like that should have been the worst spacing night of the year for the Hawks.
yeah,
No Trey, no Bogey. They weren't shooting well. Like the only person you could really trust to make a shot was Nance. The rest of the team's shot numbers were pretty gruesome. So getting sidetracked, but like the other things that I thought Okongwu did, beyond just getting the game-winning tip in too, but he enabled Dyson to be as aggressive as he was on the perimeter
yeah,
without causing Dyson any disadvantages because anytime Dyson reached the player that he was guarding might go, there might be a screen and Dyson's trying to get around that screen. And every time Onyeka was showing up to give him that tenth of a second, 2/10 of a second he needed to catch up. He would just barely slow down the ball handler without losing his own man. And I just thought he was kind of on point, on time with his defense to slow things down for Dyson to recover whenever he did. And I just thought that the two-person dynamic between those two on defense was phenomenal.
yeah, yeah. Totally agree. And on offense, it's kind of funny because I think the Celtics think of their guard like when they would get the switch onto Drew or White. I think the Celtics think of their guards as being really strong and physical, and for guards they are,
True, yeah.
right? But Onyeka made every shot he took inside the 3-point line in that game. Didn't yeah, every shot. I could have done without those two top of the two threes at the top of the key at critical times in the game, but but at the same time, Quinn's like shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. Like if you're open, you're taking the open three. And so maybe that's something that they even in that situation they want them to lean into. And then defensively, just like you said, like they didn't have to kind of work around any player, you know, in this game, and they kind of figured out how to use the Congo and Nance together and kind of stay out of trouble, by keeping them lower on the floor and generating ball pressure. And so that when you're generating ball pressure, the passes get the passing, longer passes, easier to kind of jump into rotation sooner, all that sort of stuff. And I mean, Keaton deserves a ton of credit for all the ball pressure and how active he was on defense too. And in my mind, like you try to play two bigs, against Boston in a normal setting, like last year's Hawks team, there's no point of attack defense and the ball pressure, then you just have no shot, you know. And and that was big. I mean, I think Onyeka played like the last what, like 18 minutes in the game, which was big. And Quinn is showing he'll go away from Clint, when the situation kind of calls for itself. And for one, for me, if the Celtics are switching on defense, I don't want Clint attacking switches. I want Onyeka attacking switches, and I want Nance spacing the floor in the corner. And so I thought Quinn did a great job, kind of getting the right lineup on the floor to attack the Celtics plan on defense with all the switching that what they were doing. So that was great. I mean, it was such and then separate from record being what it is, you need to win. You need a confidence boost. I mean, what a great confidence boost. But just we talk all the time about reinforcing the work you're doing. And I felt like this was a game that just really reinforced the work that they're doing. It's been a struggle to get wins, and there's been the schedule the last 2 weeks, ahead of this week was brutal, and it's hard to kind of manage energy, and then the injuries certainly kind of play into that too. But to go to that game without Trey and win that game just has to be just a lot of positive reinforcement getting experienced there.
If if you're going to pair Nance and Okongwu, and you also want to incorporate Garrison Matthews into the rotation, given, basically whatever right now is sort of the constitution of the rotation, what's there right now for healthy players. How do you want to do that? Is it do you want to see Garrison in at the same time as Clint? Like how do you want that to shake out?
Yeah, so in this game, I felt conflicted about whether Garrison should be getting real minutes or not. On one hand, if you can't generate good shots for him, maybe not. Maybe you're losing the primary reason to have him on the floor. At the same time, even when he wasn't generating shots, they had better spacing inside when he was on the floor.
For sure.
And maybe that doesn't jump out at you if you're games fast paced and things like that. But he was creating more space. But then on the defensive end of the court, it's just tough. Like for him in that setting, I liked Pritchard's really good, but I thought that was something he could quasi handle. That matchup maybe. In that way. But for me, Galen and Clint plus Garrison, that makes a lot of sense to me, right? When you look at Dyson plus Jalen plus Clint, and in this case, Ricochet, not inconsistent shooter at this point in time. I mean, just kind of like putting shooting juice into those lineups is key. I think when you put Nance on the floor, in some cases, you want to put more ball handling plus Nance plus a Conley. You got ball handling and passing, connective skills at the 4 and the 5. In that case, then maybe you don't need Garrison so much in that sense. But I mean, he's really the only, apart from Trey, he's really the only well above average shooter they can put on the court right now. You know, and that's why when I was watching, I felt conflicted. Like, did they just punt on Garrison tonight? You know, um, but the defense was reacting to him. Wherever he was when he would kind of come off of a train, two bodies kind of leaning in his direction. You know, and Mason took advantage of that multiple times, and even Ricochet a couple times took advantage of two bodies kind of being kind of leaning towards Garrison, and every little bit of that stuff helps.
Do the Hawks have enough shooting even when they get their players back? Like, or do you think that somehow this is still like gonna gonna be difficult?
So I feel like the answer is kind of an answer that's kind of in transition because you ask yourself, do they believe they can develop Kobe as a shooter? Surely they believe they can develop Ricochet as a shooter. Jalen becoming more consistent. And some part of that is shot selection and things like that. And so you have all that. I think they don't, but at the same time, I think was it I don't remember I don't remember what the quote. Maybe you'll be able to kind of place the quote, but I don't know if it was Landry or Quinn said in the last couple of days, this year is about development, and the players are fully bought into that, right? And so for me, the question I have is, come March, will they be will they have progressed up a tier as shooting wise as a team from where they are now? Because right now the answer is no. Right now they don't have enough shooting. They got to lean on transition, points off turnovers. In this game, they dominated offensive glass. It was an absolutely massive part of this game. And so, if you feel like you can kind of lean into that stuff while you're developing the young shooters on your roster, maybe that's something that you can work with. Well, I don't. I mean, They're not a contender. Like we know that, right? They're trying to build something that's going to take some time. And so for me, I think leaning into the developmental opportunities and seeing if they can bring those guys along as shooters is the right play. But if the goal is to get to the sixth seed, for example, they don't. I mean, in my mind, unless the East continues to be just like a complete, 8 teams like all within 3 games of each other the whole season, unless that continues to be the case, they don't have enough shooting to get to like 5 or 6 in the East. In my view, getting Bogey back will be huge. But we all have to also remember that it's not like they can roll him back out there at 35 minutes a game as soon as he's back. Hunter coming back against the Wizards. Hunter is above average shooter for the forward position. Um, he's not some super high level shooter. He's a good shooter
He is a
for
good
his
shooter.
position. He's a good shooter for his position. Every little bit of that helps. And so that'll be important. Roddy's been a good connective offensive player, but man, the with the absence, his defensive fit has been rough, you know. And with Hunter back, you have to assume that Roddy's, probably kind of be more of an emergency player at that point in time. But long answer, but I think they know they don't have enough shooting right now. But I think, guessing, speculating at what I'm seeing, I think their thought process is we're going to develop the shooters that are going to work for us. That's what I think is going on.
Is there anything you're looking for as a key to this upcoming Wizards game?
Just a little more composure. I mean, we don't know if Trey's going to play, right? We don't know. Um, I know Hawks fans will say it shouldn't matter, and I understand that. And the Wizards, their net rating is what, like negative double digit something. um, but just before the season started, the three of us talked about it's not going to be consistent execution in the beginning. This is a brand new offense. You know, New players to incorporate on defense, and what does that look like? And I especially think on defense, like Jalen's fit is totally different. I think he's still adjusting to that, what that looks like. And so I think it is going to be kind of up and down. But if you're going to try to avoid the play in this year, you got to go win this. You got to go win games like this. You have to go win games like this. But
You
I
have to
mean,
win
for
the
me, it's
NBA
like the
Cup,
win.
Glenn. You're not trying to win the play. You're not trying to get the play. You're trying to win the
Yeah,
NBA Cup.
you know what? I can't keep track of which games are cup games. I'll probably do a better job of that. But I mean, I'm impressed with the Wizards young players. I mean, you know, I really like Carrington, and they got several guys that are just. I mean, Carrington's going to be a legitimate starting point guard in this league before too long. And obviously Bilal is another like all world defender, that sort of thing. So I mean, when Bilal's not in foul trouble, Trey plays. He made things really tough on Trey, and the Hawks have
He
to
did.
lean on Dyson and Jalen and you know Hunter, in those cases and stuff like that. And for me, when they're forcing the ball out of Trey's hands, that's when I might want to steer my my lineup deployment more to Nance and Okongwu, because they have that ability to put the ball on the floor and make things happen and stuff like that. So for me, I just think don't let them outplay you. Don't let them outcompete you. Um, Play smart basketball, and they should be able to win the game. It really comes down to just kind of fundamentals and basics and stuff like that. But the law, man, he's tough, man. He is tough.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes with what we were just talking about. Like they have a lot of have a lot of length and athleticism, and that shows in these games where just offense isn't going that well for you. Like if you can really bother Trey, then that comes out even more.
Yeah,
But it just I still go back to like everything's just a little bit too hard for Trey this year as he gets used to this new offense as these young guys, Jalen is so young still and
yeah,
Dyson on offense at least, has his moments as a young player. Riza Shay's, 19. It's like for years and years it felt like things were getting easier for Trey and now it just feels like everything's very, very tough for him on offense that he has to exploit the tiniest little margins to get what he can get. And there are nights where that works perfectly fine, but then there are some nights where it's like, what is he supposed to do? It's just too hard. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like if
yeah,
there's just one
yeah,
good on-ball defender and the Hawks aren't making threes, like it can all go downhill really quick. Like it gets real
yeah,
tricky.
yeah, it does. And part of that is Jalen's not consistent with the ball right now. Like they're running a lot of middle. He's running middle pick and roll for the first time in his life. That's new. Even when they run some slot, pick and roll, he did a good bit of that last year. But it's they're clearing they're running empty corner, and the reads are a little bit different, and all that sort of stuff. And then Ricochet, they want him playing on the catch, attacking space, and it's going to be inconsistent. And from what I see, like Prey is fully buying into letting those guys have those opportunities to get repetitions and go through that. That's what it's going to be a really good team potentially next year. That's what the buy-in has to look like this year, and that means they win whatever 8 fewer games because they have guys that are just inconsistent with that yet. But that's the future, And I mean, it was kind of fun to see Trey's exuberance on Twitter after the Celtics game last night. He was shouting out his guys, and I think that is a little, thing that suggests he's bought in. He's bought into this. And there have been times this year where the half Trey will have 8 points and they'll put up 60, 65 points, and I think that's impressive. Is that a consistent thing yet? No, it's not. But getting Jalen to where you need him to be, you've got to let him grow through, the repetitions and the usage. And I think Trey knows that. Same with Ricochet. Veet comes back. I think Veet's a guy who's gonna on the second unit's gonna ramp up to a pretty prominent offensive role, and he's pretty inexperienced from an NBA standpoint as well. And so this is what it looks like. I don't think anyone would want to call this a rebuild. I mean, reset, rebuild, retool, everybody has their own words or whatever, but they have a young group of guys that are on the inexperienced side that they believe in. And this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be up and down for a while. I understand Hawks fans wanting to see them beat bad teams. I get that totally. Totally normal thing for fans to expect and want. But it's going to be up and down while they try to let these young guys who they really believe have a high ceiling get to have the opportunities to get feedback loops, get experience, learn from it, etc. That to me looks like the priority this year.
Yeah. Kind of going along with that, I think it's just very important to be mindful of Trey's health and Trey's minutes. He's going to get 5 days off in a row here, which should be, or at least five. That's, even if he plays Friday, he'll have had 5 days off. Um, he had 41 minutes played on that front end of the back-to-back, and that, it wasn't like that was some great situation either. You can see him taking, mid game, if somebody goes and shoots free throws for the Hawks, oftentimes he'll just be in like a crouch at 3/4 court, just trying to get things loose or stretch or rest or something. He's wearing that big back brace on the sideline. Like, if this is going to be, for them to make things easier for Trey so that he can succeed and the team can succeed, I think they're just going to have to be very careful with him physically. But I think having DeAndre Hunter back would make a big difference for that. Like, I think if
Yeah.
if you have just that one experienced forward out there with Daniels and Trey, and you get more minutes for Riza Shea with the bench, like I think that's a very healthy step because they need the bench needs some of that size on the perimeter, disruptiveness. They've been kind of small around Okongwu, and I think Riza Shea can help with that a lot. And then they just need the poise and shooting from Hunter on offense. I think that would just I don't know. I think Hunter coming back is going to matter maybe to Trey more than anyone else. I think that uh, just that fit with him and Trey and Daniels, like it's going to be a good fit, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to play Roddy at the four anymore. I mean, and I appreciate what hard Roddy plays. I appreciate what he's given them offensively. I mean, he's kind of, held the line on the offensive end of the court with his skills. Looked great on the catch. He made his 3-point shots. Even though he's not a high level shooter, he's made his fair share of 3-point shots. But just having a bigger player to play the four when Jalen's sitting, to be able to put Jalen and DeAndre on the floor together when you need size at the three and the four, depending on the matchup, that's a big deal. So I think Hunter coming back is a big deal. I hope they have hope there's some way they can kind of keep him healthier. It's hard with the track record. It's hard to know what to expect
Right,
um, because they need him. They really really need him. If that's you know a minutes limitation on the whole season, whatever. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a trainer. I don't know what the plan should be. I don't really have a way to opine on that.
right,
But whatever they have to do to kind of keep him available, hopefully they can kind of figure that out because he's critical. I mean, we know how Hawks fans have felt about him in the past, but he's a really good defensive connector. He's a great he's an awesome team defender. People are tired of hearing me say that. I know that. But and he experience with Galen, and Galen's not at the point where he does all that little stuff on defense nearly as consistently as Hunter does.
yeah,
And in crunch time, that really matters. I still think you got to give Jalen those reps. I think you've got to trust that he's going to grow into that level of execution on defense.
hmm
But it was hard until this season with the power forwards and centers just catching downhill ball handlers coming at the paint at 100 miles an hour every single possession last year. And so it is different, and the defensive pace and spacing is different because you have some ball containment capability. But Hunter definitely gives them something that they don't really get in other guys right now. The shooting at the position and just the defensive connectivity and the defensive organization is will really help. And I trust Jalen to get there, in time, but Hunter can give them that right now.
Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of this?
I'm going to be in the building on Sunday for that game.
That's Portland.
Portland, right down the road for me, right down the road, 3 hours. But yeah, I'm heading down to go see that one in person, so that should be fun.
All right. That should be good.
Yeah, and I'll be around for 3 home games in Atlanta between Christmas and New Year's, or around Christmas and New Year's. So looking forward to that as well. So good to see between now and the end of the year. I'll get to see 4 games live, which is being in Seattle is hard, but I'm excited to have those in the plans.
All right. So I guess we can sign off.
Good night, Bob.
All right. Good night, Bob.